Program is brought to you by Real Estimate. Get a free real estimate of your home's value today on the realestate.com.au app.
Welcome back. There are roughly 1,900 auctions this week. That's down 10% on the same week last year. New South Wales will hold about 950 with about 850 in Sydney. Victoria will hold about 500, most of them in Melbourne. Queensland will hold 240 with about 140 in Brisbane. South Australia will hold about 130, most of them in Adelaide. Western Australia, Tasmania and the NT will hold 18 auctions between them, and the ACT will hold 69. Take a look at the most viewed properties going to auction this weekend, and in New South Wales, the top property is 2 Clovelly Road, Hornsby. This two-bedder is surrounded by bushland and is set back from the road. The top property in Victoria is number 3, 28 to 30 Canberra Street, Carrum. This two-bedder needs a lot of work, is being sold as is, but it's $440,000. The top property in Queensland is 85 Haylock Street, Wynham. This beautiful home is set on 2 lots. It was built in 1883. The top property in South Australia is 27 Olive Street, Largs Bay. This 1950s home has been transformed into a modern two-bedder with a lap pool. And the top property in WA is 65 Tuckfield Street, Fremantle. This modern 3-storey home has 4 beds, 3 baths and a lift. And the most viewed property on the REA Group website this week is located in Melbourne at 28 Marn Street, South Yarra. This giant mansion, originally built in the 1930s, the architects retained the original facade and then completely updated the home with modern features. Split over 5 levels, this property has 5 beds, 6 bathrooms, underground parking for 12 cars. There's large open living plan areas, lots of skylights that bring in light, internal lift, CCTV system and 4 powder rooms. There's a rooftop pool, large sauna, gym and wine cellar. Asking price $40 to $43 million. Let's bring in Angus Moore here, the senior economist at REA Group. Angus, thanks for your time. Let's start with those auction numbers in Brisbane. Obviously, they're a bit lower than usual due to the cyclone.
Yeah, look, it was going to be a bit of a quieter weekend already. It was shaping up to be, and obviously with the cyclone, we'd expect to see everything that was scheduled probably pushed back, and so it will be very quiet in Brisbane and indeed all the affected areas. If we're looking around the country elsewhere, it is going to be a reasonably busy weekend. Not as busy as we were seeing this time last year, though. It is worth noting this time last year was a pretty busy period, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne. So it's maybe not a huge surprise we're not seeing quite as busy conditions as we were, but we are certainly, well into the year now. Activity's really ramped up. We're out of that Christmas end of year break and really into the swing of the selling season.
Yeah, I think there may be a public holiday in Victoria as well. But look, more broadly, how have clearance rates been tracking across Australia over the past few weeks?
Yeah, we've certainly seen a little bit of softness in Sydney in the last few weeks relative to where we started the year. Though they're still holding up reasonably well. They're better than where they were towards the end of last year when clearance rates in Sydney really did get quite soft. Melbourne's been holding up a bit better than Sydney. We've been seeing kind of mid-60s throughout much of this year. Last weekend was a little bit softer in Melbourne. So, maybe some signs things are easing there as well. Though, it is one weekend and you never want to put too much on one weekend's outcomes, but holding up a bit better than Sydney overall thus far.
All right, and then in the coming weeks, when will things start to cool off? Is it not until we get to the middle of winter in June that the numbers of sales really start to fall?
So we'll continue to see activity ramp, or in a typical year, we continue to see activity ramp all the way up to about Easter, the Anzac Day kind of public holidays. And that's when things really start to quiet off. And given that those two are falling within the same week this year, probably expect, quite a pickup into that period and then things to really start to drop off for winter after we hit that point.
All right, look, this week we got some big numbers from the Bureau of Statistics. The economic growth, the economy lifted 0.6% in the December quarter. It seems like a slight improvement, but still pretty sluggish.
Yeah, I think the emphasis is really on slight there. It is an improvement. We've been seeing slower than that, throughout much of 2024. So the fact that we're up 0.6%, which is still a bit below average, but only, a little bit below average is good relatively speaking, though, maybe not good in absolute terms. But it does start to look like things are firming up a bit. That said, a lot of the growth that we've seen over the past year has been coming from the public sector. Public final demand has been really quite strong over 2024, up just shy of 6%, which is really quite strong growth. in contrast, demand we're seeing coming from the private sector, think consumption, business investment, dwelling investment, that's been pretty slow, kind of sub 1% growth over 2024. So, still not seeing record growth by any means, still fairly sluggish conditions, but we're maybe starting to turn the corner a bit.
And we also got the building approvals numbers this week. They look pretty good, didn't they?
Yeah, they sure did, which was a bit of a surprise, really. We've been seeing pretty soft conditions in the building sector for a while. It has been a really challenging sector. It's much more expensive to build homes today than it was pre-pandemic. We saw enormous increase in input costs throughout the pandemic, and that really hasn't come back. It's also taking a lot longer to build homes as well than it used to. And so, that's also a big challenge. And what that means is, we're just not kind of building as many homes as we were in, say, the late 2010s. But the good news was in January, we saw quite a big pickup in the number of new homes being approved for construction, particularly for higher density homes. Now, that can be quite a volatile series. Obviously, higher density can be very lumpy because you get big projects coming through. But it is
Angus,
still positive signs there. And
Thank you. Sorry about this. We've run out of time. I'll see you later. Have a good weekend.